The story begins in the floating kingdom of Vyralon, a land carried in the sky by powerful ancient magic. The kingdom is home to proud dragon families who have lived there for thousands of years. Their wings are strong, their voices mighty, and their hearts filled with old traditions. But even in such a grand place, there is one young dragon who stands apart from the rest. Prince Aelran, the youngest heir of the royal family, has never spoken a word since the day he was born. His scales glow a soft silver, and his wings shimmer like moonlight, but his voice has never been heard. When he was a hatchling, the royal healers checked him many times. They said his throat was strong and his lungs were healthy. There was nothing wrong with him. Yet the prince remained silent. As he grew older, many dragons in the kingdom whispered about him. Some said he was cursed. Some believed he was shy. Others thought he simply chose not to speak. But most believed the truth was simple. They thought the young prince could not speak at all. His father, King Vorik, was a powerful dragon with deep red scales and golden eyes. He loved his son greatly and wished with all his heart to hear him speak. The king did everything he could. He brought teachers and voice masters from all over the galaxy. Some came from far human cities, some from distant moons where dragon scholars lived, and some from planets where creatures spoke through sound waves or light. Every teacher came with hope. Every teacher left with sadness. The prince did not speak for any of them. Aelran tried his best every time. He listened carefully. He watched their mouths and their claws as they showed him shapes and symbols. He opened his own mouth, trying to copy them, but no sound came out. Sometimes he strained so hard that his throat hurt for days. Other times, he simply sat quietly, letting the teachers talk while he stared at the floor. The queen, a gentle dragon named Lyria, often comforted him. She wrapped her wings around him and told him he was perfect just the way he was. But even she hoped to hear his voice someday. She dreamed of a time when her son could greet the kingdom with strong, proud words. The royal family tried different ways to help him. They gave him music lessons, hoping sound would inspire him. They brought him to healers who used soft glowing magic. They even took him to the Star Gardens, a secret place high above the clouds where the sky sings. But still, Aelran stayed silent. In private moments, the prince felt alone. He did not mind being quiet, but he wished others understood him. When he tried to speak, dragons watched him with sad eyes or worried expressions. When he stayed silent, they whispered behind his back. Even though no one was cruel to him, he always felt like he was living in a world just out of his reach. Aelran found comfort in simple things. He liked watching birds fly under the floating kingdom. He liked sitting near the glowing lakes that changed color with the seasons. And he loved drawing shapes in the sand with his claws. Those drawings were his way of expressing himself when words failed him. One day, while watching the sunrise from a high balcony, Aelran noticed something below the kingdom. A group of human workers were arriving. Humans were not common in Vyralon, but sometimes they came to help repair crystal engines or clean the old towers. These humans looked small compared to the dragons, but they moved with confidence. Aelran watched them curiously. He liked how humans used their hands. They pointed, waved, and made many shapes while talking. Their hands seemed to speak their own language. For a moment, he wondered what it would be like if he could speak that way. King Vorik stood beside him and placed a large claw on his son's back. "More teachers will come tomorrow," the king said in a gentle tone. "Do not lose hope, my son. Your voice will come." Aelran nodded silently, though he was not sure what he believed anymore. The human workers continued their tasks throughout the day. Aelran watched them from windows and balconies, finding their movements interesting and even comforting. He did not know why, but something about them felt different from the many teachers who had visited him. Night fell, and the floating kingdom glowed with soft lights. Aelran lay in his room, staring up at the ceiling, thinking about the humans and their hand movements. He lifted his own claws and slowly copied the motions he remembered. Felt natural, almost peaceful. He wondered if there was someone out there who could understand him without needing him to speak. He wondered if a language existed that matched the quiet world inside him. As he drifted to sleep, he did not know that the answer would soon come from the most unexpected person in the kingdom. A simple human cleaner, someone no one noticed, would become the one who changed his life forever. The next morning in the floating kingdom of Vyralon began with soft golden light passing through the crystal towers. The air felt fresh, and the sky below the kingdom moved in slow waves. Prince Aelran woke early, as he often did, and stepped onto his balcony. From there, he could see the workers far below preparing their tools for the day. Among them was the human cleaner named Luke Carter. Luke was not a soldier, not a scholar, and not a powerful mage. He was just a simple worker who traveled from place to place helping repair and clean different stations. His life was quiet and ordinary, but he carried a calm and gentle nature that made him easy to trust. Aelran watched him for a while. Luke moved with steady steps and worked without rushing. He checked every tool carefully, cleaned each corner with care, and made sure to greet the other workers with a smile. There was something comforting about him, something that made the prince feel safe watching from afar. Later that day, the king brought another teacher to meet Aelran. This teacher was a tall dragon from a distant world where they taught speech using glowing symbols. The teacher tried many methods, showing shining patterns of light and making deep, harmonic sounds. But Aelran could not follow. He tried to copy the symbols, but his claws trembled. He tried to produce sounds, but nothing came out. After a long hour, the teacher bowed and left with a sad expression. Aelran lowered his head and sighed without sound. He walked away from the lesson and found himself wandering through the quieter hallways of the palace. These halls were old, filled with carvings and echoing chambers. They were peaceful, and he liked walking there when he felt overwhelmed. But today, something unexpected happened. As he rounded a corner, he saw Luke cleaning near one of the older crystal windows. The human was humming softly to himself, wiping the glass until it shone like new. Luke noticed the prince and paused. "Oh, hello," he said gently. "Sorry if I'm in your way. I'll move if you need the space." He stepped to the side quickly, unsure of what the young dragon expected. Aelran shook his head. He did not want the human to leave. Something about Luke's presence felt warm and peaceful. He wanted to stay. Luke smiled softly and returned to cleaning. He worked quietly, giving the prince space but not turning away. After a moment, he glanced at Aelran again and noticed the young dragon watching his hands. Luke lifted his hands slowly and signed a simple greeting. "Hello." Aelran froze. No dragon had ever spoken to him like this. Luke's hands moved with clear, gentle motions. The shapes were simple, calm, and easy to understand. For a moment, everything felt still. The prince lifted his claws and copied the movement as best as he could. His gesture was shaky, unsteady, but filled with hope. Luke's eyes widened in surprise. "You know this?" he signed back. Aelran signed again, trying his best to repeat what he saw. His claws were large and not meant for human gestures, but he managed to express the meaning. Luke let out a breath of amazement. He knelt down slightly so their eyes were level. "Do you want to learn more?" he signed. Aelran nodded quickly. Luke sat down on the floor without hesitation. He placed his cleaning cloth aside and began teaching the prince simple signs. Words like yes, no, friend, safe, and understand. Aelran learned them one by one, repeating them slowly. Each time he signed correctly, Luke gave him an encouraging nod or smile. For the first time in his life, the young dragon felt understood. Not judged, not pressured, just understood. Minutes turned into an hour. Aelran signed with growing confidence, discovering a kind of voice he never knew he could have. His wings twitched with excitement every time he mastered a new gesture. A group of palace guards passed by and paused, surprised to see the prince sitting on the floor with a human cleaner. But they did not interrupt. They saw the look on Aelran's face, something bright and hopeful that none of them had ever seen. Luke taught him more signs, simple phrases and feelings. "I am here. You are safe. I understand you." Aelran repeated each one with care. When Luke finally stood up, he smiled. "I'll be here tomorrow too," he signed. Aelran's heart lifted. He signed thank you with a small, trembling motion. As Luke walked away to return to his work, the prince stayed in the hallway, thinking about everything he had learned. A new path had opened in his life, one that felt right, one that felt natural. That night, he lay in his room with a calm smile. For the first time ever, he looked forward to the next day. He finally had a way to speak, even without sound. And he knew exactly who had given him that gift. A simple human cleaner named Luke Carter. The next day arrived with a gentle breeze moving through the floating kingdom of Vyralon. The sky below the kingdom glowed a soft pink, and the crystal towers reflected the colors like quiet lanterns. Prince Aelran woke early again, his heart filled with a feeling he was not used to, excitement. He wanted to see Luke and learn more signs. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had a way to speak. Aelran hurried through the palace hallways, his wings tucked neatly behind him. He reached the same old crystal window where he had met Luke the day before. Luke was already there, cleaning tools placed neatly beside him. When he saw the young dragon approach, his face brightened. "Good morning," Luke signed with easy, gentle motions. Aelran copied the sign, his claws moving slowly but with focus. Luke nodded in approval. Their lessons began again, simple and calm. Luke sat on the floor like before, making sure he was at the prince's eye level. He taught Aelran signs for feelings, actions, and simple questions. Words like happy, tired, want, and help. Aelran learned fast. His claws were large and clumsy compared to human hands, but he adjusted each gesture in his own way. They practiced for a long time. Each time Aelran learned a new sign, his wings fluttered with pride. Luke laughed softly when the prince got excited. Their bond grew quickly, even though they had only known each other for a short time. While they practiced, the queen, Lyria, walked quietly near the hallway. She paused when she saw her son signing with the human cleaner. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she did not breathe. She watched as Aelran signed a full phrase, "I am happy." Tears gathered in her eyes. She had waited years to see her son express words with such clarity. Though it was not spoken language, it was still communication, real, honest communication. Luke noticed her and gave a small, respectful bow. "He learns very fast," he signed, then spoke softly. "Your son is amazing." Aelran turned and saw his mother standing there. He signed mother and then happy. His claws shook a little, but the meaning was clear. The queen covered her mouth with her wing. She stepped forward, bowed her head, and gently touched her forehead to her son's. It was a gesture of deep love among dragons. "You have given us a gift, human," she said softly to Luke. "My son has been silent all his life. Today he speaks with his hands." "Thank you." Luke shook his head. He already had the ability. He only needed someone who understood. He signed as he spoke, making sure Aelran understood every word. The queen left with a warm smile, her heart full of hope. For the first time in many years, she believed her son would find his own voice one day. After she left, Aelran looked at Luke with grateful eyes. He signed, "Friend." Luke smiled and signed the same word back. Later that afternoon, Aelran showed Luke the places he liked in the palace. He took him to the glowing lakes that shimmered with different colors. Luke watched in amazement as the water changed from blue to green to purple. Aelran signed simple ideas like beautiful and peace. Luke agreed. They walked along a balcony overlooking the endless sky. Luke held onto the railing tightly. He wasn't used to floating cities. Aelran noticed his discomfort and gently guided him toward a safer path. Luke laughed a little, embarrassed. "I guess dragons are braver about heights," he signed. Aelran signed, "Not always," and pointed to himself, then to the high edge, showing he too felt nervous sometimes. Luke appreciated the honesty. As they continued walking, Aelran taught Luke some basic dragon gestures, slow wing movements that expressed emotions. Luke tried them awkwardly, causing the prince to make a silent, breathless laugh. It was the first time anyone had ever seen him laugh. By evening, they returned to the palace halls. Luke had to finish his work, but before he left, he signed "Tomorrow." Aelran nodded eagerly. When the prince returned to his room that night, he felt lighter than ever before. For years, he had lived behind a wall no one could reach. But now that wall had a door, and Luke had shown him how to open it. He practiced signs in front of the mirror until he grew tired. Then he curled up under his blankets, feeling warm and safe. As he drifted off to sleep, he wondered what new signs he would learn tomorrow. And deep inside his quiet heart, a small sound began to form. Not a full voice yet, not words, but the beginning of something new, something growing. Hope. The days that followed became the brightest days Prince Aelran had ever known. Every morning he woke early, filled with energy and hope. The floating kingdom of Vyralon seemed more alive than before, as if the sky itself felt lighter. Aelran made his way through the palace halls each day, excited to meet Luke and continue learning. Luke arrived at the same spot every morning, cleaning supplies arranged neatly. He always smiled when he saw the young dragon. "Good to see you," he signed. Aelran returned the sign quickly, his claws moving with growing confidence. Their lessons grew longer and their conversations grew deeper. Luke taught him signs for more complex ideas. Words like trust, fear, courage, and story. Aelran repeated them again and again until he mastered each one. One morning, Luke brought a small notebook with him. He wrote simple English words on one side and drew hand signs beside them. Aelran studied it with great interest, carefully tracing each drawing with his claw. Luke laughed softly. "You're a fast learner," he signed. That day, the king, Vorik, walked quietly through the halls. He paused when he saw his son signing with the human. His powerful chest rose and fell as he watched the exchange. The king had brought many teachers to help his son, but none had reached him like this simple cleaner. Luke noticed the king and stood respectfully. Aelran followed his gaze and grew nervous, but the king approached slowly. "Show me," Vorik said gently. Aelran swallowed his fear and lifted his claws. He signed "Father." "Then I am learning." The king's eyes widened. His strong voice trembled a little. "You have found a way to speak," he whispered. Luke stepped back, letting the moment belong to them. The king bowed his head deeply, something dragons rarely did. "Thank you, human. My son has waited his whole life for this." Luke shook his head, signing while speaking softly. He was always able. He just needed someone to listen. Aelran smiled and signed "friend" to both of them. After the king left, Aelran and Luke continued their lessons. Aelran learned how to express questions. He signed "Why are you here?" Luke answered with simple movements. "I travel for work. I go where I am needed." Aelran signed "Why help me?" Luke paused thoughtfully. "Because everyone deserves to be understood," he signed. The answer warmed the young dragon's heart. That afternoon, Luke asked Aelran if he wanted to show him more of the kingdom. Aelran agreed eagerly. He took Luke to the Star Gardens, a place so high in the sky that the air shimmered. Strange floating flowers grew there, glowing with soft silver light. Luke stood in awe. "Beautiful," he signed. Aelran added "peaceful" with a graceful wing motion. Luke nodded. They walked further until they reached the singing cliffs. When the wind passed through the crystal edges, the cliffs made gentle musical tones. Luke listened with wonder. As they explored, Aelran grew more expressive. He signed faster, mixing claw gestures with small wing movements. Luke paid close attention to every motion, making sure he understood everything. At one point, Aelran signed a longer phrase, "I feel safe with you." Luke's eyes softened. He replied, "I am glad. You are not alone." Aelran's wings fluttered happily. For so long, he had felt like a silent shadow in his own kingdom. Now he felt seen, heard, understood. By evening, they returned to the palace. Luke still had work to finish, so Aelran sat nearby, practicing signs with the notebook. The palace workers whispered quietly, amazed by the change in the young prince but careful not to disturb him. During the last lesson of the day, Luke taught him how to sign voice. Aelran practiced several times, touching his chest and moving his claw outward. "Your voice is here," Luke signed, touching his own chest gently. "Not just from speaking. This is your voice too." Aelran copied the sign slowly, then held it close to his heart. That night, the queen and king visited Aelran in his room. They asked him to show them what he had learned. Aelran signed many phrases. I am happy. I understand. I want to learn more. The queen cried softly while the king stood proudly. When he finished, Aelran signed friend and Luke together. The king and queen exchanged warm smiles. After his parents left, Aelran stood at his window, looking at the stars. He signed voice to himself again and again. He knew that he had finally found a way to speak. But deep inside, he felt something else beginning to grow. A small, soft sound that formed in his chest when he signed certain words. Not a whisper, not yet, but the beginning of a real voice. The lessons with Luke had done more than teach him signs. They were waking something inside him. The next morning began with soft light spreading across the floating kingdom of Vyralon, turning the crystal towers into glowing shapes in the sky. Prince Aelran felt awake before the sun had fully risen. His mind was full of thoughts, and his heart felt warm with a calm excitement. Every new day now meant learning more signs with Luke, and every lesson made him feel more connected to the world. Aelran walked through the long palace halls, passing guards and workers who greeted him with quiet respect. Many of them had begun to notice the change in the young prince. His steps were lighter. His wings no longer drooped. His eyes held a spark they had never seen before. They did not know exactly what had happened, but they knew something good was taking shape. Luke was already waiting at their usual place, sitting on the floor with his notebook and tools nearby. When he saw the prince, he gave a warm smile. He lifted his hands and signed, "Good morning." Aelran repeated the gesture easily. His claws moved more smoothly now, each sign becoming clearer and more precise. Luke began the day's lesson by teaching signs for emotions that were harder to express. Lonely, proud, brave, and worried. Aelran practiced each one carefully. He repeated them until Luke nodded in approval. When they reached the sign for lonely, Aelran slowed down. He signed it with a soft motion, then looked away. Luke understood. He touched his own chest and signed, "Not alone anymore." Aelran looked back at him and repeated the sign for a friend. Luke returned it with a smile. After they finished the first part of their lesson, Luke asked if Aelran wanted to take a break. The prince nodded and led him to the glowing lakes again. They sat near the edge, watching the colors shift from blue to gold. Luke took out his notebook and drew a simple picture of a dragon and a human sitting together. Aelran leaned closer, fascinated. Luke signed, "This is us." The prince placed his claw gently over the drawing and nodded. Later, as they walked back, they saw a group of dragon scholars entering the palace. They carried scrolls and books. One of them noticed the prince and bowed respectfully. "Your Highness, we heard you have begun communicating. If you wish, we can help you learn written dragon script." Aelran paused. He looked at Luke, unsure. Luke signed, "If you want to try, I can help you." Aelran nodded slowly. He lifted his claws and signed, "Learn." The scholars led them to a quiet study room filled with glowing crystals and ancient books. Aelran sat at a large stone table while Luke sat beside him, ready to help if needed. The scholars taught Aelran simple symbols, basic shapes, old letters, and short words. Aelran copied them carefully. Some lines were crooked, and some symbols were tilted, but he tried his best. Luke helped guide his claw gently when he struggled. The scholars watched with wide eyes. It was the first time they had ever seen the prince so focused and expressive. "He learns quickly," one whispered. Aelran felt a quiet pride growing inside him. He had never imagined being able to learn like this. He had spent so many years thinking he was broken, convinced that something inside him did not work the way it should. But now he understood that he simply needed a different path. After the lesson, Luke and Aelran walked back to the halls. Luke signed, "You did great today." Aelran signed, "Thank you," and added a small wing flutter of happiness. As they continued walking, they passed the balcony that overlooked the sky. A strong wind blew by, making Luke step back nervously. Aelran reached out instinctively, steadying him with his claw. Luke laughed softly and signed, "Heights still scare me." Aelran signed, "I help," and guided him along the safer side of the path. When they returned to their usual spot, Luke taught him a new sign. He touched his chest and moved his hand outward. Hope. Aelran repeated it slowly. Hope. Luke touched his chest again. You have hope now, he signed. Aelran looked down at his claws. He signed, you gave hope, with a careful motion. Luke shook his head gently. No. You found it on your own. I only helped you see it. The prince held the sign for hope against his chest for a long moment. He felt something deep inside him shift. A warmth, a stirring, almost like a faint echo in his throat. For the first time, a tiny sound escaped him. A soft, breathy noise. Not a word, not even a whisper, but the beginning of one. Aelran froze. Luke looked up, eyes wide. Aelran touched his throat, surprised. Luke signed slowly. Your voice is waking up. Aelran signed, how? Luke thought for a moment, then signed. Because you are no longer afraid. You understand yourself now. The prince stood quietly, absorbing those words. That night, when he returned to his room, he practiced the new sign again and again. Hope. The small sound happened 2 more times. Quiet, weak, but real. Aelran curled up under his blankets with a calm heart. For the first time in his life, he believed that one day he would speak. And he knew that whatever happened next, he would not face it alone. Part 6. Aelran stood at the highest balcony of the floating kingdom, the cold wind brushing against his scales. The lights of Vyralon shimmered below him like stars resting on land. He had climbed here alone, needing a quiet place to think. Everything had changed so fast since the night he spoke to Adam in sign language. It felt like the kingdom had turned into a different world. Adam had been summoned every day since then, and Aelran stayed close to him whenever he could. The young prince watched carefully, learning new signs, expressing more feelings, and slowly opening a part of himself that had always been locked away. But now a new weight pressed on his heart. Rumors were spreading across the towers and halls of Vyralon. Some dragons whispered that a human should not be so close to the royal family. Others believed Adam was dangerous. And some even said that Aelran's sudden change meant something dark was coming. The whispers grew louder every hour, and the air felt heavier. A quiet knock sounded behind him. Adam stepped onto the balcony, rubbing his hands together in the cold. He looked tired, but he gave a small, friendly smile. You okay? Adam signed. Aelran hesitated, then signed back slowly. They talk. Bad things. Adam nodded. He had heard the whispers too. Even though he was only a cleaner, he could feel the shift in the atmosphere everywhere he went. People get scared when they don't understand something, Adam signed. They don't know you're just trying to be yourself. Aelran glanced at him, worry still in his eyes. Father angry? Adam paused. No, I don't think he's angry. I think he's confused. And that was true. King Vorik had watched the two of them closely during lessons. He said little, but the weight in his gaze revealed deep thought mixed with uncertainty. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind pushed across the balcony, carrying a distant sound, deep, echoing horns from the outer towers. Adam jumped slightly. What was that? Aelran's wings twitched. Warning signal. Warning for what? Aelran stepped closer to the railing, eyes narrowing as he stared toward the horizon. Sky ship, he breathed. Adam followed his gaze. In the distance, he could see a dark shape cutting through the clouds, glowing red beneath its hull. It looked nothing like the peaceful supply ships or visiting vessels he had seen before. This one felt sharp, heavy, and dangerous. Do you know who that is? Adam asked. Aelran's throat tightened. Zareth clan. Adam frowned. That sounds bad. Very bad. Aelran signed firmly. They hate humans. Adam's heart dropped. Before he could say anything else, guards stormed onto the balcony. Your Highness, one of them said to Aelran, bowing quickly. The king requests both of you in the throne hall immediately. Adam and Aelran exchanged a look. Whatever was coming, it wasn't just a visit. It was something much more serious. They followed the guards through glowing hallways and down spiraling paths lit with shifting blue flames. The air grew tenser as they approached the throne hall. When they entered, the entire room was buzzing with voices. King Vorik stood tall in front of his throne, his wings partially spread, his expression hard as stone. He turned sharply when he saw Aelran and Adam enter. "Come forward," the king said, his voice deep and rumbling. Aelran stepped forward, Adam close behind him. "A ship from the Zareth clan is approaching," King Vorik said, "and they have demanded to meet with us. Specifically," his eyes landed on Adam. "With the human." Adam froze. "Me? Why me?" he asked, swallowing hard. "Because," the king said slowly, "they claim the change in my son is because of you. They wish to know how you did it. And they are not here as friends." Aelran immediately stepped in front of Adam, wings flaring slightly, a protective instinct rising inside him. "They cannot take him," Aelran signed fiercely. Adam touched his arm gently. "Hey, it's okay. We don't know what they want yet." King Vorik sighed heavily. "I will not allow them to harm a guest of Vyralon. But we must be careful. The Zareth clan is powerful, and their anger burns quickly." Adam looked up at Aelran and signed quietly. "We face it together, okay?" Aelran nodded without hesitation. As the horns sounded again in the distance, louder and closer this time, both of them felt the same thing. Whatever was coming next would test their bond more than anything before. Part 7. The day of the Zareth clan's arrival dawned with heavy clouds covering the floating kingdom of Vyralon. The wind carried tension through the crystal towers, and even the lakes reflected a darker shade of the sky. Prince Aelran stood beside Luke in the throne hall, his claws clenched slightly, wings tense. They both knew the encounter would be dangerous, but neither stepped back. The doors of the throne hall opened, revealing the Zareth clan. Their dragons were large, dark-scaled, and fierce. Their eyes glowed with suspicion and anger. At their center, a tall dragon with sharp golden horns approached, staring directly at Aelran and Luke. "King Vorik," the leader's voice echoed, low and rumbling. "We come for answers. Why has your son, the mute prince, begun communicating in ways only humans understand?" Aelran felt his chest tighten. He glanced at Luke, who gave him a reassuring nod. "He learned from a friend," King Vorik said firmly, "a human who helped him express himself. There is no magic, only understanding." The Zareth leader's eyes narrowed. "A human touching a royal heir? This is an insult to the clan." Adam stepped forward cautiously. "I did not intend insult," he signed, making sure Aelran understood. He added slowly, "I only wanted to help." Aelran moved closer to Adam, protective. He signed clearly, "He helped me speak. He is my friend." The Zareth leader hissed, stepping back slightly. Murmurs ran through their ranks. The tension was thick, like the clouds above. Then, unexpectedly, Aelran did something no one had seen before. He took a deep breath and spoke. His voice was soft but clear. "I will not be silent anymore." The room went still. Dragons turned their heads, eyes wide. Luke gasped softly. King Vorik's powerful chest rose with surprise. Aelran continued, finding strength in each word. "Adam taught me how to speak, not with magic, not with fear, but with understanding. He is my friend, and he will always be." The Zareth dragons stared in disbelief. The prince, who had never spoken, now held his voice boldly, defending a human. Adam's eyes glistened. He had never expected this moment. He signed quickly, "I am proud of you." Aelran nodded, smiling faintly. The Zareth leader opened his mouth to protest, but King Vorik's gaze was like fire. "You will respect the bonds formed here, or leave." The tension slowly eased. The Zareth dragons murmured among themselves, realizing that force would achieve nothing. Finally, the leader inclined his head, reluctantly acknowledging the prince's strength. After the clan left, the throne hall erupted in quiet celebration. Servants and guards whispered excitedly. Aelran's voice, though soft, had carried across the room. He had spoken his first words aloud to the world. He turned to Luke and signed, "Thank you," then added with a soft voice, "Friend." Adam smiled, signing back, "Always." The prince's confidence grew with each passing moment. He practiced speaking and signing together, combining them naturally. His wings lifted higher with each gesture, and his heart felt lighter. King Vorik and Queen Lyria watched from the side, pride shining in their eyes. The young prince had not only found his voice but had done so with courage, loyalty, and love. That night, Aelran walked through the palace gardens with Luke. The stars twinkled above, and the glowing flowers illuminated the paths. Aelran spoke softly, telling Luke about his dreams, his fears, and the things he had long kept silent. Adam listened, signing when needed, nodding with understanding. Every word, every gesture, strengthened their bond. The prince realized that his voice was not just sound. It was connection, trust, friendship, hope, and with that realization, he knew he could face anything. Part 8. The kingdom of Vyralon was calm the next morning. The events with the Zareth clan had passed, and the prince felt lighter than ever. Prince Aelran woke early, stretching his wings and thinking about the day ahead. He wanted to continue learning, exploring, and practicing his voice with Luke. The human cleaner arrived promptly, carrying his usual tools and notebook. Aelran greeted him with a wide smile and a soft, clear voice. "Good morning, friend." Luke smiled back and signed, "Good morning." They spent the morning practicing new signs and speaking short phrases aloud. Aelran's confidence grew with each attempt. The small sounds he had made before were now stronger, clearer, and filled with meaning. Later, the prince and Luke explored the palace gardens. Glowing flowers and singing fountains made the space feel magical. Aelran signed and spoke about the colors, the sounds, and the shapes. Luke listened, signing when necessary, encouraging every effort. "You are not alone anymore," Luke signed, touching his chest gently. Aelran nodded, signing, "I know," and spoke softly, "You gave me hope." They walked to the crystal lakes, reflecting the floating towers above. The prince dipped a claw in the water and smiled at the ripples. "I understand now," he said aloud, his voice steady. "My voice is more than sound. It is how I connect." Luke nodded. "Exactly." The royal family observed from a distance. King Vorik and Queen Lyria felt pride welling in their hearts. The young prince, who had once been silent and misunderstood, had now found a way to communicate that was uniquely his own. It was a voice of courage, friendship, and understanding. That afternoon, the palace staff gathered to celebrate. Aelran signed and spoke to everyone, explaining what he had learned and thanking them for their patience. Luke stood beside him, smiling warmly. Aelran realized that his friendship with Luke had changed everything. The human cleaner, once unnoticed and ordinary, had helped the dragon prince find his voice. Together, they had shown the kingdom that understanding and empathy could overcome fear and tradition. As the sun set, Aelran stood atop the highest tower, looking at the floating lights of Vyralon. He spoke softly, signing along with his words, "I am no longer silent. I am heard. I am me." Luke stood beside him, signing, "Always here, friend." Aelran nodded, feeling a deep warmth. He had found his voice, his confidence, and his bond with someone who believed in him. The prince and the human cleaner became a symbol of unity between dragons and humans, a story passed through generations. And in the quiet night, under the twinkling stars, Aelran finally understood the truth. Voice is not only sound. Voice is understanding, connection, and friendship. With that knowledge, he felt stronger than ever, ready to face whatever the world might bring.